Hello, and welcome to On Point. I'm Alex Vejar. Anorexia nervosa has the highest death rate of any mental illness. This, according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness. In the United States alone, 30 million women and men will suffer from an eating disorder at one point in their lives. But the National Institutes of Health only provides $28 million in funding for research, less than $1 per person affected by an eating disorder. Some students say they believe media could contribute to the body image issues which may lead to eating disorders.
I think they play the biggest part, as it's kind of like visual porn, I guess, that people look at. It's all fake, it's all a facade. Model does not really look the way that she does or how she's presented.
Like 3 years ago, I was playing football and I was way bigger than right now, probably like 40 pounds bigger. And now I look at myself like I feel like I'm all skinny, like no muscles. And then I look at TV and like, oh, they're all big and working out, looking.
God.
They look big in TV, and it makes me feel like, oh man, I need to start working out. So in kind of way, yeah, it does affect me.
Certain celebrities that you look up to definitely alter the way that you view yourself, and you kind of think that you should be like them or look like them.
People magazine says 80% of women say actresses in movies and television make them feel insecure about their own bodies. But the issue doesn't only apply to women. A Journal of the American Medical Association pediatric study says nearly 18% of adolescent boys say they're worried about their weight and physique. Social media may also play a role in the increase of eating disorders among women. A Florida State University study found women who spent more time on Facebook also had higher levels of disordered eating. On Point's Katie Fauskee has more on the story.
Thank you, Alex. Joining me today, we have Vanessa Birdsong, program therapist at the Bella Vita Eating Disorder Treatment Center here in San Fernando Valley. Then we have Avery Rodriguez, student involved here in the Get Real campaign here at CSUN. And then we have Jensen Smith, president of JADE, Joint Advocates on Disordered Eating, a peer education program dedicated to the awareness and prevention of eating disorders. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So the first question, Vanessa, I'm going to ask you, millions of Americans suffer from eating disorders. Can you explain to us the difference between disordered eating versus an eating disorder?
I think that's a really good question, so I'm glad you asked that, because there is a difference. Not everybody knows what it is. An eating disorder, at one point or another, tends to turn into kind of an addiction, you know, where somebody can't stop. There's kind of an obsession and a compulsion to overeat, to overexercise, to start restricting, to get into some really odd habits that aren't usual or typical, really, for anybody else that you might see that's having a regular meal. So really disordered eating tends to be kind of along the lines of maybe I eat a little too much here, a little too much there, but it's not really an obsession or a compulsion at that point. It's not an addiction. So people can usually stop themselves from proceeding and engaging in the behaviors that they do, versus an eating disorder, sometimes they can't stop themselves.
And Avery, can you tell us some of the signs we can look for among people with eating disorders?
Signs you can look for people with eating disorders, I believe, would have to be kind of like a reluctance to talk to anyone. They kind of, they're taken aback mostly, tend to isolate themselves, and it's not something one can easily admit to. I find that people with eating disorders don't typically want to believe they have a problem. It's just a medium for them to kind of really hide the pain from something else that's deeper, typically what it is, depending on their body image. So I would say isolation, a change in habits from typical ones that could be seen by friends or family, and just a sort of reluctance to really act in their usual behavior.
Okay, perfect. And Vanessa, back to you. What are the effects eating disorders can have on you mentally and physically, and the dangers that can come from it?
Yeah, and that's the thing with eating disorders that makes them so dangerous, is because you have both the emotional and the physical component. So the emotional things include, like you were saying, in terms of the isolation, which can lead to depression. I can't tell you, I think, a single client that didn't struggle in some way with depression that also had an eating disorder. It's also an anxiety disorder is one way I think of it, because there's, I think, pretty much every case that I've seen has been, it's been connected to anxiety, like this core level of anxiety, which comes from all sorts of other things, but the emotional side of that, which is why it's so important for people to get treatment and to get help and see a therapist to work through the emotional side. But the physical side, there's so many different things. I mean, people die from this disorder all the time. And I mean, I'm just kind of thinking of some things in terms of bulimia nervosa. People end up tearing the esophagus, and they can end up needing to have repairs done there because that can kill them. They have heart issues. Sometimes their heart just is working too hard, and so we'll need to make sure that they get sent to the hospital if that's the case, and a lot of people end up in the hospital. Sometimes people will need to have a feeding tube if they're restricting too much and they're just not taking in any calories. Severe restriction can lead to all sorts of things. The brain gets starved, people can't focus, people in school have a really difficult time. We have to see a lot of teenagers that struggle because they just can't think clearly because they're not feeding their brain. So those are just a few things that come to mind, but it's just so deadly. I mean, you have osteoporosis, and bone loss all the way around. People end up with really severe physical limitations that they can't actually fix later on in life because of the damage that's been done. Kidney failure, you name it, I can go on and on and on.
Everything. It seems like there's so much.
And I mean, the scary part is all of that can and will, if people don't get help, can lead to death. I mean, it's just so scary.
Yeah. Now, there's statistics out there that say 4 out of 5 10-year-old girls are afraid of, or 10-year-olds in general, are afraid of being fat. Is this something you guys see a lot in children, in young boys and girls? And if so, what ages do they start thinking about their weight? And we'll start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is actually something I'm really passionate about myself because I have a 2-year-old who's, already starting to hear people call his arms skinny and, oh, look at his skinny legs. And I was reading something last night that said, girls especially start to think about their weight in kindergarten. And that is so early. That's an age where kids should be thinking about playing and learning about the world and things like that. And something that we need to think about is that we're influencing this new generation of kids that's going to become adults that could possibly have an eating disorder eventually. So something, that I like to think of as being mindful of what you can say around kids. If you're pointing their weight out, if you're pointing their body shape out, think about why you're doing that. And think about, is this going to benefit them? Is this going to be something that helps their body image? Or is this going to be something that hurts their body image?
Yeah. Vanessa, do you have anything to add to that?
In terms of the age in which we hear about eating disorders or even just body image talk, I mean, I think the youngest I've heard of in working with clients over the last 4.5 years is probably 3, which to me I don't even understand. Like 3 years old, what? But you were saying, I mean, in kindergarten, that's just so young, and it's true. I mean, it's really sad to see just a little child so worried about what he or she looks like, certainly with boys and girls. I think it's certainly far underreported with boys. There's almost a stigma attached to it, so I think boys don't get treatment as soon as females do, which is unfortunate, something I'd like to work towards changing out there just in terms of creating awareness. But still, yeah, the youngest I've heard, 3 or 4, I've treated, I think the youngest I've had is 11. But even then, I mean, it's just so sad, like heart-wrenching.
Yeah, also just to add to that, thinking of growing up and parents, kids look at their parents and see what they're doing, and so it would be awesome for parents to be really mindful of talking about their own weight around their kids because they want to be just like their parents. And so, if mom or dad is pinching their own stomachs or is, talking about dieting all the time, kids are quick. They pick up on everything. Mm-hmm. And that is why perhaps a 3-year-old could think, oh, mom says or dad says he's fat, maybe I am too, or that's where they get these ideas.
Yeah. This next question is for all 3 of you. Avery, we'll start with you. How many people with an eating disorder say the media has affected them in any way with having this disease?
The media is so impactful with this type of disease, and it's really impacting us in a subliminal way. using, different tactics. It's just, there's repetitive, things you see constantly, so you think, oh, it must be true. Or, so role models even. You see your role models on TV and such, or, newspapers or anything in these tabloids, and you think, oh, geez, I want to look just like them. They're dieting, I should probably do the same. And each person's different, and people need to understand that you need to come at this, at eating, and body image your own way. Don't look to others to decide how your body is going to react. I found that, a large majority suffer from poor body image due to media. It's simply because it surrounds our lives, social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that, right? And the TV, we're starting to stem more away from that and move towards like internet and things like that. But there's still like a lot of, advertisements on there, a lot of Photoshop, making people feel bad, and it's widespread because now we live in this day and age where everything is so instant access, instant gratification. You can look anywhere and see something that could make you feel poor body image. And I think that the media has more poor body image advertisements than they do to benefit people or to make people feel good about the way they look and how different each person is. We tend to kind of live in this social environment where we kind of cookie cut these perfect people, and it's hard for others to really fit into these kind of roles. And so it affects a large majority because there are certain specifics that go into making this perfect person, right? And if you don't fit that, you feel depressed. You feel like it's something you're not doing right instead of maybe the media is wrong. You take it upon yourself, like, I couldn't do it. So I think it affects a large majority, especially youth. It's definitely a huge factor because it surrounds our lives to this day.
And would either of you like to add anything to that?
I just wanted to add, the media, exactly what you said, it does subliminally get to us in every single way. But I also think that they're hitting us at all angles. I think the media is like outwardly saying, here are all these, these bodies that we think America should be. And they're putting it out there. They're also showing us images, subliminal images of, like a perfume ad with a man overpowering a woman, that those subliminal images like, oh, well, that's how a relationship should look like, and things like that. I think they're hitting us from all angles, and they're really smart about it because we're buying it all. We're not asking too many questions, and we're trying to look like what they put out there. And so the first thing to do is to question that.
And how would you say that our current ideal body image has changed over time?
That's a really great question. So in JADE, we have all these pictures of old-timey superheroes versus their new time, what they look like. And, we have pictures of what Superman used to look like, the very first Superman. And, his body in the Superman suit, he looked just like a regular dad. He looked just regular. And the Superman now has the buffed out everything, and his suit or his armor that he wears is just, it has the six-pack, it has the chest, it's got the arms, it's just gigantic. And so, taking it from there, those images that were put out then, same with all the other superheroes, and look at the same superheroes in the same movies that they do now, it's just more, the women are more cut, this way, the men are more like, have the more abs and chests and muscles and all that stuff, and it's really changed.
And what about with people such as Marilyn Monroe? She was a more voluptuous, curvy figure, and now...
Yeah, and she was a size, she was the #1 everything.
Yeah.
She was a size 12, I believe, 12 or 14, and that was what the ideal image of a woman was in those sizes. We also have, there's also this image that we show every once in a while in our JADE presentations of a swimsuit contest in the 60s, I believe, and all the women are just, they looked normal, and actually I don't want to say normal because I can't really define normal for you guys, but they're more voluptuous, they're more towards the size 12 like Marilyn Monroe was. And now, you know, you see certain swimsuit competitions, different things like that, and women are concerned with an incredibly flat stomach, incredibly, you know, like the thigh gap, all of that stuff, where the concern is how thin can you get?
Yeah.
Did you want to?
Well, I wanted just to connect to that too, because with that idea of, you know, you need to look this way, right, to kind of be accepted, is a lack of acceptance of the self, which is such a big part of eating disorders. I don't have a sense of identity. I don't know who I am because I'm trying to fit into all these different roles that the media is saying, here, do this, look like this, be this way, as opposed to why don't you just be yourself and have that be unbelievably okay.
Yeah, and here's a question that maybe a lot of people don't ask themselves is, do you really want to look like that person or this person or exactly like that person? Because that person already exists. And they already exist for a reason because they're put in whatever place on this earth for whatever reason. And don't you want to be more of yourself and figure out who, you know, what you should look or want yourself to look like, and that could be healthy and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like be yourself, everyone else is taken kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just be yourself.
I've never heard that, but I like it.
No, those are all really great points. And you know, every day we're bombarded with these images and messages that reinforce this idea that to be happy and successful, we have to be thin and beautiful. Do you feel the media images equate happiness and success with thinness? Not beauty alone, but just happiness. Like,
I think that's pretty apparent in the media. I mean, you look at kind of anything out there, whether it's a music video or it's a magazine or it's a billboard, and that's kind of what it's connected to. It's like, look this way and you will be successful, you will be happy. Yet how many people really are happy when they try and reach something that's unattainable and unrealistic?
yeah.
I certainly see that everywhere. I don't know about for you too.
Absolutely. I mean, you can see shows like Biggest Loser that show the public that, okay, these people are sad only because of what their body looks like. What else do they do in life? I want to know more about them. You know, these people are horribly sad and depressed just because they're bigger than they think they need to be. And like they get, each week you watch Biggest Loser, they get happier and happier as they get thinner and thinner. And that's the message that's put out there. Yeah. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at all these kind of like media figures in the past, I know for men, the bigger you were, the kind of more money and power you had, or just happiness, like a Santa Claus, right? Big guy, but he was always jolly, right? Or I know in the older times, if you were a bigger gentleman, it meant that you were wealthy enough to kind of provide for yourself. Nowadays, I don't know too many social media shows or anything that have bigger gentlemen as the main characters who are happy. It's typically these kind of like, you know, youthful, buffed men that are, you know, that are just unattainable for most people. They don't typically go for, you know, a skinny guy or too skinny or too big, because those people can't be happy. They want to look like the buff guy, you know. Mm-hmm. There's not too many more images that equate, you know, being bigger with being happier. It just doesn't seem like that. Or you always see those teen shows where that one bigger kid makes this great transformation to becoming the hot guy. And suddenly he's better because of that. Well, why is that? Nothing changed about him, simply his appearance. But he gained so much popularity and so many more doors open for him simply because he changed his body image. Yeah. And
yeah, also the bigger person in TV shows is often the comic relief.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
You know, they're not the ingenue, they're the comic relief.
Yes. Well, we know media alone isn't something that causes eating disorders. There's many other reasons behind it. Vanessa, can you explain to us what some of these reasons that these disorders develop are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's kind of where I was going to go to if we didn't get there, is because, I mean, the root of an eating disorder has really nothing to do with food and really nothing to do with body image. Mm-hmm. Has really everything to do with anxiety with low self-esteem, which is connected to low self-worth, which is often connected to other things like trauma. It doesn't have to be necessarily any kind of abuse. It can be, so a lot of clients with that, but could be being bullied in school. Like that's a form of trauma, and that can certainly lead to an eating disorder. Sometimes it feels like it's about control. Sometimes people grow up in households where they don't have any control, or they might be over-controlled by some family members, and this is their only way out. This is their only way to be able to communicate, hey, this is a problem, I'm having an issue, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, help me. It's kind of like the only way to communicate that feeling is to go towards an eating disorder, because for whatever reason, this is all they feel that they can control right now. I know what I can put in my body or what I cannot put in my body. And if I get sick enough, maybe somebody will notice and do something.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to communicate when people grow up in households where it's not a common or really even encouraged thing to do. So we get a lot of people who struggle with not knowing how to communicate what's really going on inside. So people end up with all this repressed emotion that gets swept under the rug, and then eventually it comes out as, in this case, an eating disorder.
Yeah. And I want to go back to something you said earlier that you made a great point. It affects men. That's something we don't talk about as much. Now, what are some of the eating disorders that men suffer from the most that you see?
From the most, that's hard, because I've seen pretty much every eating disorder with men. I see a lot of orthorexia, and that kind of ties into the whole I need to look, bigger and stronger. Orthorexia is just kind of the eating disorder that people don't talk about as much, but it's a focus on just eating really healthy and exercising to the point of, again, it's an obsession, and it's really hard for people to stop doing that. So it gets to be where going out and having a family meal is terrifying, because what if it doesn't fit in with my nutrition and everything? So it's, but I wouldn't say that any eating disorder is necessarily more prevalent with males, because I've seen them all. I've seen bulimia, I've seen binge eating, and I've seen anorexia and then orthorexia. So I've kind of seen it all.
Okay, and then also, Avery, what would you say the ideal body image is for men in society today?
For men in society, I know that personally, growing up, I was always told you can't be too skinny. I grew up in a Latino family, and constantly I would be bombarded by the fact that I was a little more thinner than the rest of my family was. It's more generally based on like eating a lot of heavy food, and I would always, be called like, oh, you're too skinny, you need to eat more. And the kind of ideal body image that goes with that is they want you to eat more, but they still want you to be able to look like fit. You still have to, you can't be like too muscly. You have to be like this kind of like lean muscle that is able to be attractive to most people. For men, I think it's always wanting to be the Brad Pitt or the Christian Bale, or like these kind of like superhero looking people that are just, big chest, big shoulders, and just kind of toned, just really toned. Everything is really defined on your body. And I know personally I struggled a lot with trying to achieve that. And, being able to just, wanting to eat whatever you want. But I know for men, like you said, it's very much focused on, well, you got to hit the gym. Well, you have to get your protein supplement. You have to, keratin, all that. Are you making sure you're eating at this point? Where's your shakes? How are you doing? How often are you going to the gym? A lot of athletic equipment, have a lot of slogans that say, just go, just do it, just be there, just keep going, make it like a routine. And it's really tough when, you don't feel that it's really benefiting you or it's healthy at some point. It feels like an obsession, like some sort of ideal that you have to live up to. And a lot of other things that you like to do are pushed to the side. Yeah. And so, it's really difficult to achieve that kind of, role model star look of Superman or something.
And can you tell us what the Get Real campaign is, what you guys do here at CSUN?
The Get Real campaign is a campaign that we're trying to really, it's made by students. Everything we do, we have a committee. We meet with, different organizations like JADE, and we try to really kind of alert students here at CSUN to media and how it is affecting everybody. We make lots of programs that help students really connect with eating disorders and this kind of idea of poor body image without kind of like pushing them away, because there is advertisements, there is news information about this kind of topic, but we've noticed that too often do students tend to push it aside. It's too informational. They can't relate to it. No, I don't care for it. It's just going to say the same thing. So we try to come at it from our own perspective, getting the ideas of students and peers, and trying to get use social media to bring awareness to this eating disorder.
Yeah. And just to end, is there something we can do as a society or even just as an individual to help someone who is suffering from an eating disorder? Vanessa, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say to be open to communicate, to listen. Sometimes that's really what people just need. They need somebody to hear them. I mean, really hear them. Because so often people don't get heard, you know, because we have our defenses up and we're not really listening to each other. I think when people stop and listen and just are there with somebody, that can be so healing. So I think being that for somebody can open up doors that maybe were never there for them, and that can help them start talking about their struggles. And that's kind of a way in to help them in other ways with the eating disorder, if that's the case.
Yeah. Avery, and anything to add?
Just like you said, communication is key. I definitely think it's a lack of dialogue that is often the cause of eating disorder. It's just learning to communicate and have these open discussions and be able to listen to someone who's hurting, who may not, want to do it or may not be showing signs of it, like outwardly, just having that open dialogue.
Also, I would say it's great to educate yourself. If you think a friend has a very specific eating disorder, go online and see, what it looks like, and maybe, so when you do talk to them openly and you are listening to them in a private time, not around other people, which is important, you know a little bit about it, and you can, pick up those things when you're listening to them. You can hear that it sounds like they're suffering. It sounds like this is really difficult.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for being here and being here for such an informative, important topic.
I mean,
so much
thank you for having us. I think just creating a space for this is just so wonderful.
Life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on Twitter or on Facebook by searching CSUN On Point. You can watch us on LA Channel 36 on Saturday mornings at 8:30 and Sunday mornings at 11:30. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Alex Vejar.